So, Kyle, I'm just going to read the most important quote for me that probably took this and escalated it to the point where it became what it is now. Draymond said, and I quote, "If you ever wondered why the Memphis Grizzlies are not ready to compete for a championship, look no further than this idiot right here." Give me your thoughts on Draymond's comments.
I mean, when it comes to Draymond Green, it's safe to say that he's always vocal about his opinions, and I can appreciate that. And when it comes to this situation, I can definitely understand where he's coming from. And just kind of looking at it from just a troll perspective, I think he made a good point simply when it comes to just overall trolling about Dillon Brooks. Because when you look at Dillon Brooks compared to Draymond Green, when you compare their resumes, there's no comparison. Draymond's a 4-time NBA champion. He won a Defensive Player of the Year. He's one of the architects when it comes to just the player personnel in regards to Golden State's dynasty. Draymond's overall resume at this point speaks for itself. Now, when it comes to Dillon Brooks, look, the Grizzlies are an up-and-coming team. They're a feisty team. They wear their emotions on their sleeves, and I can definitely appreciate that to a certain extent. But when it comes to the Grizzlies, while yet a loud and vocal team, they just haven't really been able to establish dominance in the playoffs yet. Now, granted, they're still young and they have an opportunity to be able to make a name for themselves over the next couple of years. But when it comes to this back and forth between Draymond Green and Dillon Brooks, I'll just be frank about it. It's drama. And I know social media will just go crazy with it, especially when, if someone thinks that Draymond says something good or if Dillon claps back, it's just kind of like this back and forth thing where one guy throws a grenade, the other one throws one back, and it just goes from there. And this will be something that will be monitored throughout the rest of the regular season. And if it just so happens that these two teams meet in the playoffs with the Golden State Warriors and the Grizzlies, I would imagine one of the things that's going to be at the forefront would be this beef between Draymond Green and Dillon Brooks. Because let's just be honest, Dillon Brooks flat out said he does not like Draymond Green. He respects what Draymond has done with Golden State, but personally, I just don't think that Dillon Brooks and Draymond Green like each other. And it doesn't have to be that way. And to be quite honest with you, I actually kind of like this from a competitive standpoint, because when it comes to the current day NBA that we all witness, it is a little bit too buddy-buddy. Everybody, I think, respects each individual player a little bit too much because most of these guys are friends. They've known each other for a long time. But I like the fact that Dillon Brooks and Draymond Green are going back at it. And this could be one of those situations where Dillon Brooks, he's a young guy, and he's chirping at one of the old heads in the NBA because Draymond, he's no spring chicken when it comes to being an NBA player. He's in his mid-30s. But the hardware and the resume speaks for itself. And I like the fact that he claps back and he basically tells this young buck, know your place, young fella. You're not there yet. So overall, I find this whole situation kind of amusing, but I think it's going to be something that could play itself out if these two teams play each other in the playoffs. And I know that that will be something at the forefront if that so happens when the playoffs start in late April, early May, around that time frame.
What makes me laugh about the whole situation is not the fact that the Grizzlies and the Warriors as a whole aren't necessarily in a situation where they can be arguing, because obviously Memphis isn't winning. Golden State's coming off of their 4th championship in 8 years. Like, it's not the same level of pettiness, competitiveness.
They're on different levels competitively.
What makes me laugh
over time.
Exactly. What makes me laugh is the fact that Dillon Brooks is the equivalent of a role player, right? And as is Draymond Green, everybody knows he is probably the 4th, 5th option in terms of offensive efficiency. That's just not what Draymond is anymore. He's more of a utility player. Go out there and get you some rebounds, get you some blocks, get you some assists, can bring the ball up. Very aggressive in the post. You know what I'm saying? He is a Swiss Army knife of sorts. Dillon Brooks is out here acting like he's dropping 30 a night. He's acting like he's competing and contributing to Memphis's level of play. I mean, there was a stat the other night. He was like, 3 points, 2 rebounds, a steal, and he fouled out, or whatever the hell the stat line was. But he had things to chirp. He was walking into the arena with an open cut shirt, acting like he's so important. Like, if this was Ja and Draymond Green, to me, it would make more sense because Ja is the superstar. Even if it was Jaren Jackson Jr., again, one of the second options, Desmond Bain, somebody else that was competitive on the offensive end, somebody that was making a difference. I mean, yes, Dillon Brooks tonight had 14 points. Draymond had 16 points. So, I mean, like, he did something, but he's not somebody that is a contributing factor to a championship team, at least not in my opinion. So for Dillon Brooks to come out here and talk trash like he's playing meaningful minutes and doing something, yeah, is he a gritty player? Does he play defense on the? Does he guard the best offensive player in most situations? Yes. I mean, for God's sakes, Dillon Brooks has been getting known more and more as a dirty player. I mean, what he did to Donovan Mitchell a couple of months ago looked a little suspect, and other players in the NBA, what he did to Steph Curry a few years ago. The reputation that Dillon is making for himself is not a very good one. And I think that the chippiness between the two of them is very ironic. Again, Draymond was this chippy guy. Draymond was the character that you hated in this story of the NBA because he was that guy that was like not necessarily contributing. Like I said, Dillon is or Dillon isn't. But you can't make a comparison. Kyle already said defensive player of the year, 4-time champion, multiple-time all-star. You don't get an all-star game if you're not playing meaningful, if you're not playing good basketball. You don't win a defensive player of the year award if you're not doing your job. And in those situations, Draymond played the 5. He played the center position when he won the defensive player of the year award. And for those of you who don't know, Draymond's like 6'7", 6'8", guarding players well past his size and weight. So that's a very, very, very tall feat to accomplish. Again, it's levels. Dillon Brooks ain't there, and he's talking as if they've won. The Grizzlies have made comments like, yo, this is going to be a dynasty, or we are a dynasty. You haven't won anything. You haven't even been to a Western Conference Finals. Like, you have not made meaningful strides as this young group to talk trash to an actual dynasty. And I'm just not understanding where this is coming from. I get it. There may be some bad blood because you're salty that Golden State kicks your ass every year, but congratulations, you beat them in the regular season. That's not really going to... You don't get an award for that. You don't get a pat on the back for that. So I'm just looking at this and I'm saying I love it. I love that Draymond's calling him out. I love that Draymond is basically saying, like, you suck. And to an extent, I don't think that Dillon Brooks is a bad at basketball player. We all know that to get to the NBA, obviously you have to be talented in some regard, but you don't go at one of the best defenders in the NBA. You don't go at one of the all-time greats of this generation in Draymond Green. And if you do, you better back it up. 14 points ain't going to do it. I'm not saying that you got to drop 30, but you got to be a little bit more consistent if you're going to trash talk. And especially from the Grizzlies standpoint, you got to win basketball games and go far in the playoffs if you were going to talk to, again, of this core, a 4-time champion group. It doesn't work that way.
And just one final point about the whole Dillon Brooks, Draymond Green situation. I remember Draymond was saying in his point on his podcast, he was essentially saying that nobody on the Grizzlies really likes Dillon Brooks or sees him as this pivotal piece of that Grizzlies unit. Well, it's kind of ironic that Draymond did say that because, Kev, what was one of the biggest preseason headlines that took social media and the NBA by storm? It was Draymond Green punching... Hold up, there was a little bit of a delay there. No, it was Draymond Green punching Jordan Poole in the face. And it's just kind of ironic for Draymond to say that about Dillon because, well, let's face it. I mean, Draymond is a huge piece of this Golden State dynasty. No one disputes that. But I guarantee you, when it comes to the one-on-one relationships that Draymond has with the rest of the players in that locker room, I can't say that he's buddy-buddy with everybody in that locker room. And he's even said that about Jordan. And I don't think Jordan should really feel any sort of pathway or take any sort of pathway to be buddy-buddy or be quote-unquote friends with Draymond after something like that. Because, it's one thing to be competitive. It's one thing to have disagreements on the court. It's another thing entirely when you're punching somebody in the face. And it wasn't just a small little punch either. Draymond really went after Jordan in that...
Locked his shit.
In that specific scenario. So it's just ironic that Draymond said it in that way about Dillon Brooks when, to be honest with you, I don't think Draymond necessarily has the best relationships with his own teammates.
Probably not.